The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures.
It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth, in numberless waves of grass, and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers.
It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and in flow.
I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life for all the ages.
The sermon today is something I've transcribed from a video. It was on YouTube and it's on Vimeo. It was produced by a guy named Gerald Padilla. I thought it was significant enough to present it here, so here it goes. There is a strong parallel between the Buddhist way and a scientific way of perceiving and understanding reality. While these ideas are not exclusively Buddhist, they are compatible with other ancient Eastern philosophies. Focus will be placed on the parallels to Buddhism. Buddhism seems to resonate quite harmoniously with new scientific discoveries. We will look at the three main tenets of Buddhism, those being emptiness, interconnectivity, the nature of reality, and draw parallels between these ideas and modern scientific understanding. The premise of this presentation is the belief that these two seemingly opposite modes of perception, non-material and material, intuitive and rationalistic, spiritual and scientific, are actually two ways of understanding one reality, two sides of the same coin. A very important thing to keep in mind while listening to this is that there lies a large discrepancy between how we perceive reality and how reality actually exists. Or maybe not, maybe we as Hindus are more enlightened, who knows? Maybe not. Emptiness is that from which all arises and returns. Buddha said that all arises from emptiness, a non-dual and infinite source. For instance, the chair you're sitting on, or the smartphone you're looking at, and even your body is arising in this moment from emptiness. To better illustrate this, think of a dream. In this dream, there's an elephant and you. So you think, this is me, and that is the elephant. They have the appearance of being two separate entities. However, when you wake up, you realize that both yourself and the elephant were both manifestations of your dreaming consciousness. A source of both this dream and an infinite variety of possible other dream worlds. Another way to picture emptiness is as the page of a book. The page of a book without any words can be understood as being emptiness, while the page itself relays no message. There are an infinite variety of languages, words, sentences, and stories that can be placed upon the page. So emptiness can be understood as the field of potential in which every possibility arises. To begin to understand this, we'll have to redefine our understanding of material reality. We'll then find out that this emptiness, also known as the Tao in Taoism, or the Brahma in Hinduism, seems to strongly parallel the quantum field as defined by quantum physics. Let's first explore the nature of what appears to be material reality, a reality that exhibits a dualistic nature. The matter that makes up what we experience exists as both a wave, or non-material entity, and a particle, or material entity. This waveform that particles exhibit has no definite location within space or time, but can only be understood as being everywhere all within space or time. But can only be understood as being everywhere all at once, spread out through the entire universe. Imagine an apple in your hand. As a particle, this apple exists within a defined location in space and time, as in this example, your hand. In its waveform, this apple would not only be in your hand, spread out through all of its possible states. You say, how can this be? How can something that appears to be solid at the same time have the ability to be something non-solid? And how can something that appears to have a definite location in space and time also be able to exist over a large region of space? As astounding as this may sound, the experiment that confirmed this has been repeated thousands of times with the same results. And what at first came as a shock to the physics community inevitably became a well-known and accepted fact. The thing that determines whether or not a thing acts like a wave or particle was ultimately found to be the very thing that was observing this phenomenon: human consciousness. A particle's quality is not predetermined, but defined by the very mind that's perceiving it. So what appears to be solid reality is just one side of two aspects of underlying reality: that of wave and that of particle. Atoms are 99.99%, with 12 points after the decimal point, empty space. Again, this forces us to redefine how we see both ourselves and reality. If our bodies and everything around us is mostly empty space, then why do things have the appearance and feel of being solid objects? This feeling of solidity is actually a repulsion or push of other sets of atoms, similar to how magnets will repel each other when two similar sides are faced together. Our hands, feet, fingers never really touch anything, but are actually experiencing a repulsive force that gives us the illusion of solidity. Believe it or not, you're not actually touching the chair you're sitting in, but rather hovering right above it. As the atoms of your chair and your body repel each other, what really holds everything together and makes reality to appear to be solid is the sea of fluctuating energy, not actually anything physical. Not only is your body only empty space, but everything you see, experience, and interact with is overwhelmingly empty space. In quantum physics, we have what is called the quantum field. This is an electromagnetic field in which all matter arises from. The particles that arise from this field are not separate, but are actually different forms of the same system. From field and matter arising from a field are the same thing. To quote Albert Einstein, quote, "There is no place in the new kind of physics for both the field and matter, for the field is the only reality," unquote. The field is the only reality. Imagine a turbulent ocean as the field. As oceanic waves fluctuate up and down, the very tips of the waves crescent are what matter and reality arise from. The rest of the sea is out of the range of perception, but still exists as potential for matter. So all matter arises and returns from this field, a field that is a continuous medium spread out through all space and time, seemingly paralleling the idea of emptiness. From this field not only arises all the particles we perceive, but the foundations for each and every atom that holds both ourselves and the universe together. The idea on oneness or interconnectivity in Buddhism is the idea that everything in the universe is intimately interconnected. The idea that we are separate entities, separate from each other, and the world around us is considered to be an illusion. The true nature of both ourselves and our reality is that of complete unification, or oneness. Let's see how these ideas parallel with what physics is now telling us. Einstein didn't take well to quantum theory, and in 1935, he and a few fellow physicists wrote a paper under the name of EPR. In their attempt to disprove quantum theory, not only did they further validify it, but they came across another strange feature of quantum physics. It is called quantum entanglement. When two particles interact with each other, they become what is called entangled, developing a special relationship with one another. Now, when one of these particles are affected, say by measurement or observation, one particle will reflect the exact same trait as the other instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are, across the room or across the universe. Einstein found this so strange that he later termed it spooky action at a distance. Spooky. To understand how strange this really is, let's imagine that you and a friend have two basketballs that have become entangled. That's a pretty stretch, but let's imagine that. Regardless of how far each of you have traveled from one another, each of your basketballs will instantaneously reflect anything each of you did to them. This can happen feet away, miles away, or even hundreds of light years away. In fact, entangled particles seem to behave as one object rather than two, three, or many separate objects that they appear to be, thus explaining strange action at a distance. No matter where their position in space and time, these two particles remain forever interconnected. Now, if we go back to the singularity before the Big Bang, in which our entire universe was condensed into a point smaller than an atom, we realize that all matter and energy that we experience right now has and always be entangled or interconnected. Quantum entanglement seems to point to a true oneness within the universe. We exist within a sea of energy that connects all atoms. From the atoms that are arising to make this talk, to the atoms in the birth of a star across the universe, the field from which these atoms arise from is spread throughout all space and time, an interconnected web. The quantum field is the web that connects all life, energy, matter, and existence into a single system. Everything we experience has a single interconnected source. To quote the Buddha, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. In Buddhism and many other mystic traditions, the mind is the center of reality. It is not just a part of reality, but it is the very thing that creates it. Similar to how our dreaming mind creates our dream worlds. The idea of a world being outside our mind, a world separate from our mind, is something that Eastern traditions deem to be incorrect. In reality, all is mind. Nearly 2,500 years after the Buddha, quantum physicists seem to have stumbled upon the same truth. All matter originate and exist only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. That last bit was a quote from Max Planck, one of the fathers of quantum physics. The famous German physicist Werner Heisenberg realized that by simply observing the atomic world, we were affecting it. He realized it is impossible to know both the electron's speed and location at the same time. As soon as electron speed is measured, it simply does not have a well-defined location in space. As soon as the electron's location is measured, it simply does not have a well-defined speed. He called this the uncertainty principle. To quote Heisenberg, what we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning, unquote. This happens not due to the limits of our perception or measuring devices, but rather points to the very mirage-like quality of electrons. Conscious observation is connected with the event that it is observing and actually defines its momentum and location. It is observing and actually me start. Conscious observation is connected with the event that is observing and actually defines its momentum and location. Reality is defined by the mind that is observing it. The physicist John Wheeler considers the observer such a crucial aspect of quantum theory that he suggests that we change the term to actually be participator and not observer. The double-slit experiment, originally created to test the nature of light, revolutionized quantum physics and the way we understand reality. The experiment involved the device that propels particles through slits and records where they land on the other side of the barrier. What physicists found was astounding. Particles that were once thought to be solid were behaving like waves, and how they behaved was dependent upon whether or not they were being observed. When unobserved, the particles took on a state of superposition, or indefinite or infinite potential. While when observed, particles take on a well-defined location within finite possibility. If we were to theoretically do this experiment with baseballs, when watching baseballs pass through the slits, we'd see them land on a well-defined location on the other side. When not watching the baseballs passing through the slits, we'd see an interference pattern. Kind of like a knuckleballer, I think. In other words, when not watched, the baseballs behave like waves going through both slits simultaneously. It is not until your mind or your consciousness defined the baseball's position that they even had a position. This experiment has been done thousands of times with the same result, and has been done with particles as big as carbon-80 molecules. Maybe not baseballs, but anyway. Reality does not exist without the mind that is defining it. Without mind, reality exists only as an infinite potential. Quantum physicists have now stumbled upon what mystics have been saying for over 2,000 years, that reality is the projection of the mind. The lines between science and spirituality have become inevitably blurred, the concepts interchangeable. Our inquiry into science, our attempt to gravitate away from all that is spiritual, religious, or mystical, has inevitably left us at a doorway in human history, a doorway that could provide a paradigm shift into a new self-realized civilization, casting aside the dogmas of yesterday, embracing a new world vision, and creating a mythology for the 21st century. To make this transition, we must be willing to question. We must be willing to break apart the very foundations of our own belief systems. We must be willing to engage in an open-minded inquiry into the true nature of reality. Sounds a lot like you, doesn't it? The implications are profound, yet ultimately it's in our hands, because true change can only happen from within ourselves. For the sake of all those before us and all those after, may we awaken to a new global vision that sees not hatred, but love, not division, but unity, not conflict, but compassion. Let us, as Unitarian Universalists, lead the way through this rabbit hole transition to come build the land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, made and create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like